You think showing up everywhere makes you visible, but something darker happens silently. Every uninvited step you take quietly edits your value in their mind. If you want your presence to feel rare, you must see what you are leaking. There is a simple rule you were never taught. Your presence is a signal, not decoration. Where you choose to be tells people how you see yourself inside. When you move into places where you are not wanted, you broadcast that you are optional. Human minds run a constant value scanner. It is quiet but always active and precise. This scanner asks one question: does this person protect their own worth or give it away? Each time you appear without invitation, the scanner lowers your rating by an invisible level. You think they are ignoring you because they do not see you. In reality, they ignore you because they already measured you and filed you as background. Uninvited presence trains their brain to treat you as something that will always be there. Scarcity creates value, overexposure kills it slowly. When you appear only where you are chosen and respected, people feel tension and curiosity. When you appear everywhere, especially where you are not asked, people feel boredom and quiet disrespect. Dark psychology focuses on patterns, not moments. One uninvited appearance looks innocent. Many uninvited appearances become a personality signal. The signal says, I will chase attention, I will chase inclusion, I will chase belonging. Machiavelli is often interpreted as saying that if you offer yourself cheaply, power prices you cheaply. This is not only political advice, it is a psychological warning about presence. When you move into spaces without invitation, you write a message: my worth depends on your approval. A manipulative mind reads that message clearly, even when you do not. To them, you are not dangerous, you are not rare, you are a resource. Resources are used, not respected, and your unprotected presence gives them permission to start using you. They test you with silence, you still show up. They test you with cold behavior, you show up again. Every repeat visit tells them, you do not need warmth to keep coming, you only need access. This creates an emotional power gap that you almost never notice. The one who controls access controls value. The one who keeps arriving loses both. Your need for proximity becomes more visible than your internal standards and boundaries. Albert Bandura often explained that people learn through observation and repeated consequences. When others see you entering unwanted spaces and staying there, they learn a script about you. The script says, this person will accept low treatment and still keep returning for more. Now notice the hidden chain. Your repeated uninvited presence teaches them you do not require invitation. Their relaxed behavior teaches their mind you are safe to ignore and safe to exploit. Slowly, the emotional frame changes without any spoken agreement. You are no longer a guest, you are background noise. You are no longer a choice, you are furniture that moved itself into the room. This is the brutal part people rarely admit. When your presence feels forced, your absence feels like relief, not loss. That is how your value is destroyed without open conflict or obvious humiliation. Dark psychology calls this a self-inflicted downgrade. You become the one who proves that your time has no premium. Once they believe your time is cheap, they protect their own and waste yours freely. Notice what happens inside you when you keep going uninvited. You start overthinking every small signal, every look and every silence. Your nervous system works harder than anyone else there, yet you gain the least. Your mind tries to justify the situation. You tell yourself that persistence will eventually make them respect you. In reality, persistence without invitation only deepens their belief that you need them more. There is another layer, even more dangerous. You start copying the energy around you to avoid rejection. You bend your opinions, your reactions, even your silence, trying to deserve a place. When you adjust yourself to fit spaces that never chose you, you rewrite your identity. Your inner voice stops asking, do I want this? It starts asking, will they finally accept me? This shift is how manipulators enter, not through force, but through the emptiness you create. A dark manipulator loves people who cannot stay away from uninvited spaces. Such people are easy to shape, because they fear distance more than disrespect. All the manipulator must do is keep them around, but never fully welcome them. Your brain then connects pain with distance and tiny crumbs with emotional survival. This is the same conditioning model Bandura described. Repeated rewards and punishments build automatic behaviors. You become trained to chase minimum signals of approval from people who never truly wanted you. You may think you are being loyal or patient. From the outside, it looks like you are auditioning for a role you already lost. Each appearance without invitation repeats that audition, and the silent rejection continues shaping you. The real secret is this: value is not only what you bring, it is also where you refuse to go. When you avoid spaces that never invite you, you force their scanner to reconsider your worth. Distance activates curiosity. Scarcity activates respect in minds that are still capable of respect. But some minds are not interested in respecting you at all. They only respect what they can control. They only value what stays available. If you stop going uninvited, you expose what kind of mind you were dealing with. So the question becomes sharp and uncomfortable. If you suddenly withdrew from every place you are not truly wanted, who would actually come looking for you? And more disturbing, how many people would quietly feel relieved that you finally stopped reminding them how little they ever valued you? You think people judge you by what you say, but they judge you faster by where you place yourself. You think staying visible keeps you relevant, but forced visibility creates silent rejection. If you want people to feel your absence, you must understand the psychology of presence. Human minds work like hidden gates. Each gate has conditions you never see. When you walk through a gate without invitation, their mind marks you as someone who does not understand boundaries. That single signal shapes every future interaction, no matter how polite they act on the surface. This happens because the brain protects its social order. Every person has an internal hierarchy, and every hierarchy assigns value based on how others behave. Going where you are not invited looks like self-placement at the lowest level of that hierarchy. You never notice it immediately because the shift is quiet. They will still smile, they will still talk, but the tone inside their mind has already changed. The silent thought is simple: if you respected yourself, you would not be here like this. Machiavelli once warned that people value what feels difficult to reach. When you enter spaces without being asked, you remove every difficulty. You turn yourself into something guaranteed, and guaranteed things lose emotional weight. Dark psychology explains this through availability bias. The more you are available without invitation, the less emotional power you hold. Their brain learns you will show up no matter what they give or do not give. And here is the twist you never notice. When you stay uninvited, they stop fearing your absence because you have shown them you will never create one. They stop caring about your time because you have shown them it is always accessible. You think you are proving loyalty and sincerity. To a manipulative observer, you are proving low standards and emotional dependence. The difference between the two is invisible from your side, but obvious from theirs. This is where Bandura's observation principle becomes dangerous. People learn from repeated patterns more than from words. If you enter uninvited once, they notice it. If you enter uninvited many times, they label you by it. And once a label forms in their mind, everything you do passes through that filter. Your kindness becomes neediness, your patience becomes desperation, your silence becomes fear. You lose control of the frame because you entered the frame without being asked. Every human mind has a psychological boundary system. That system decides who gets closeness, who gets distance, and who gets nothing. When you enter a zone not meant for you, their boundary system punishes you through coldness. They may not confront you directly because confrontation requires effort. Instead, they use targeted indifference, a tool that saves energy and still lowers your worth. You feel that indifference as tension, but you misread it as temporary discomfort. What you do not see is the deeper damage. Indifference from others trains you to tolerate low engagement. With time, your mind adjusts to that energy level, accepting that this is what you deserve. This is the hidden trap of uninvited presence. You start performing for acceptance, not for connection. Your behavior changes first, your self-respect changes next, and your identity follows last. And the frightening part is that you cannot see the shift happening inside you. You only feel exhaustion, a strange dullness in your confidence, and a constant attempt to justify your place. These are symptoms of invisible psychological erosion. Once your identity adapts to forced spaces, you begin to believe distance is a threat. You chase any form of approval, even if it is shallow or inconsistent. This is exactly how manipulative minds gain control without lifting a finger. They do not need power. You hand it to them by refusing to leave spaces that reject you. You become predictable and emotionally cheap to them. Your presence becomes something they can take or leave without consequence. Dark psychology breaks this into a simple principle. The one who needs entry the most has the least authority once inside. And when authority disappears, respect evaporates with it. Your value suffers because you tried to force it into a place that never recognized it. And their behavior towards you teaches the crowd how to treat you as well. Value destruction becomes a chain reaction built from your own decisions. The mind that disrespects boundaries also disrespects the person who ignores them. The mind that respects rarity also respects distance. Your value rises or falls according to how strongly you protect your space. Now ask yourself a question you may have avoided. If every gate in your life closed today, which ones would truly open again only because they valued your presence? And which ones would stay closed because they preferred you silent, distant, and finally absent? You think people mistreat you because they misunderstand you, but the truth is sharper. You teach them how to treat you by the places you choose to stand. If you want to protect your value, you must study how presence becomes a psychological weapon. Human minds operate with silent calculations. Every time you show up uninvited, they update your psychological profile. The update says you do not guard your emotional territory. When a mind detects someone with weak territory protection, it adjusts its behavior instantly. It becomes colder, more selective, and less careful with your feelings. This happens because you gave them access too easily, so they assume everything else about you is easy too. They stop offering clarity because they think you will accept confusion. They stop offering respect because they think you will tolerate disrespect. They stop offering stability because they think you will settle for unstable attention. Machiavelli once suggested that if something appears too eager, people suspect its value. This is why your presence backfires when it appears in spaces where you were not asked. Your eagerness becomes a signal that you are trying to earn what others receive naturally. Dark psychology explains this through dominance perception. The mind ranks all social interactions from strong to weak, confident to insecure. When you move without invitation, the mind reads insecurity and lowers your ranking subconsciously. You never hear this ranking, but you feel it. You feel it in shorter replies, colder tones, and reduced curiosity. You feel it in the way they stop trying to impress you. The moment they stop trying to impress you, the dynamic shifts permanently. You become the one who tries harder, gives more, and waits longer. They become the one who chooses when and how to respond. This imbalance is the core of emotional control. Once someone learns that you still show up despite low treatment, they upgrade their power. They no longer manage the connection, they manage your desperation to stay involved. Bandura once said that behavior becomes automatic when consequences repeat. If every time you arrive uninvited, they treat you colder, your brain still returns because it hopes for change. This repetition creates a loop where your desire outweighs their respect. You begin to shrink your standards to fit their environment. You allow silence to substitute for communication. You allow uncertainty to replace clarity. These shifts happen quietly and progressively, like a fading identity. You start believing that acceptance must be earned through presence. So you keep showing up, thinking consistency will rewrite their opinion. But the human brain does not reward forced consistency, it punishes it. The more you appear uninvited, the more they categorize you as replaceable. Your presence stops feeling like a choice and starts feeling like a background sound. People do not pay attention to sounds that never stop. This leads to another hidden psychological phenomenon, selective blindness. When someone sees you too often in places you do not belong, their brain stops noticing your qualities. They only notice your availability, not your strengths. You become a symbol of overaccess, not a person of value. This is how emotional invisibility begins. You fade not because you are weak, but because you are too present. Dark psychology reveals that people admire what withdraws at the right time. The mind sees distance as confidence and sees forced nearness as insecurity. Your absence can raise your value faster than your presence ever did. But here is the deeper danger. When you stay uninvited long enough, your own mind adapts to low positions. You begin to see yourself through their downgraded perception. You stop expecting respect because you learn to operate without it. You stop expecting effort because you accepted their lack of effort. You stop expecting invitation because you convinced yourself it was unnecessary. This internal erosion is how manipulators gain silent control. They do not need to insult you. They let your uninvited presence do the work for them. You willingly reduce your own value so they never have to confront their intentions. And when you finally leave those spaces, the damage follows you. You question your worth in new environments. You hesitate before setting boundaries. You fear losing access more than losing dignity. The real truth is this. Every time you walked into a place without being wanted, you taught your own mind to settle. And a mind trained to settle forgets how to demand anything higher. So now the cliffhanger becomes personal and unsettling. If you suddenly refused every space that never asked for you, would you still recognize the version of yourself that appears? Or would you meet someone you lost long ago without noticing? You think rejection harms your value, but silent tolerance harms it far more. You think staying present keeps you included, but it secretly teaches them you accept exclusion. If you want to protect your self-worth, you must understand how uninvited presence reshapes your identity. Every mind carries a hidden map of social ownership. This map decides who belongs, who is tolerated, and who is ignored. When you enter a space without invitation, the map places you in the lowest category automatically. This happens even when people act polite. The human mind does not reveal its ranking through words, it reveals it through energy. You feel the shift first, long before you understand it. The shift appears as lack of interest, slow engagement, and predictable indifference. They do not push you away because pushing takes effort. They simply allow you to exist near them without emotional weight. Dark psychology calls this passive devaluation. It destroys value without conflict, argument, or confrontation. It teaches you that your presence changes nothing for them. Machiavelli once noted that people notice loss more than gain, scarcity more than abundance. When you show up uninvited, you remove the sense of scarcity. Your presence becomes a guarantee, not a privilege. Once the mind sees you as guaranteed, it stops assigning effort to you. Effort requires motivation, and motivation comes from uncertainty. You erased uncertainty by entering without invitation, so they erase effort in return. This is where the psychological trap deepens. You begin to double your effort to balance their lack of effort. You try harder to be seen, valued, or acknowledged. Your increased effort does not make you more valuable. It makes you more predictable. Predictability reduces tension, and tension is what creates emotional impact. The human mind desires what is not fully available. It respects what sets conditions. It values what withdraws when disrespected. Bandura explained that people learn through repeated consequences. When others see you entering unwanted spaces without withdrawing, they learn you have no consequences. This makes your boundaries invisible, and invisible boundaries invite exploitation. Exploitation begins quietly. They ask less from themselves and more from you. They respond slower, speak shorter, and care less. Their behavior becomes a safe test of your tolerance. Each time you stay despite low treatment, you pass their test. Each past test lowers your emotional price without your awareness. You think you are being patient. They think you are being dependent. The psychological gap between these two interpretations widens with time. And then something subtle but dangerous happens. You stop protecting your identity because you are busy earning placement. You stop noticing disrespect because you are focused on staying included. You start lowering your standards so their behavior feels normal. You start shrinking your needs so their minimal effort seems valuable. You start redefining self-worth based on the smallest signals. The human mind rewires itself through repetition. Each day you remain in spaces that do not value you, your inner voice loses strength. Your confidence becomes conditional, your decisions become hesitant. You begin to fear leaving more than you fear being undervalued. This fear keeps you trapped in environments that drain you. And drained people make easy targets for psychological manipulation. Manipulative minds understand one truth better than you do. A person who hates distance will accept anything to avoid it. They do not need to control you, they let your fear do the work. Uninvited presence exposes that fear. Your fear of absence becomes their tool of dominance. Your consistent arrival becomes their silent victory. But here is the deeper psychological twist. When you force yourself into spaces that never asked for you, you begin to blame yourself for the coldness you feel. You internalize the rejection as a permanent flaw, not a situational mismatch. This is how identity corrosion begins. Not through insults, not through conflict, but through self-comparison. You compare your worth to their reaction, and their reaction is shaped by your uninvited presence. You think you are the problem, but the environment was the problem all along. Your value did not decrease, it was misplaced. Misplacement looks like worthlessness when you are standing in the wrong psychological territory. So now the cliffhanger sharpens. If you walked away from every space that never invited you, would you finally see your true value rise? Or would you discover that the only thing ever holding it down was your refusal to step out? You think silence protects your dignity, but it protects your disappearance instead. You think staying polite keeps you respected, but in unwanted spaces, politeness becomes invisible. If you want your value to rise again, you must understand how uninvited presence rewires both minds. Every person carries a mental equation that measures worth. This equation tracks how often you appear, how much you tolerate, and how quickly you react. When you show up where you were not invited, the equation marks you as emotionally unguarded. This one mark changes everything. It tells their mind that your self-respect depends on their acceptance. It tells their mind that you see them as more important than yourself. Dark psychology calls this self-directed submission. It is not obedience, it is quiet surrender of value. You do not realize you surrendered anything, yet they sense the shift instantly. Machiavelli once hinted that people rarely value those who seek favor too eagerly. Your uninvited presence becomes proof of eagerness, even if your intentions were pure. The mind does not measure intention, it measures pattern. And the pattern is simple: you went where you were not wanted. So they assume you will continue to chase the same environment even if it drains you. This assumption becomes their psychological advantage. They do not need to reject you openly. Open rejection risks guilt. Silent acceptance without welcome achieves the same effect without consequences. And once they see that you stay despite emotional emptiness, they downgrade you quietly. Their attention becomes selective. Their words lose depth. Their engagement becomes colder than their politeness can hide. You feel the shift, but you do not leave. You reinterpret coldness as challenge. You reinterpret indifference as temporary. You reinterpret distance as something you can fix. This is how the environment begins to control you. Not through force, but through ambiguity. Ambiguity keeps you invested, hoping something will change. Bandura explained that intermittent reward is the strongest conditioning pattern. When they give you small signals of acknowledgement, you attach meaning to them. You convince yourself that one warm moment can erase 10 cold ones. Your brain becomes addicted to minimal approval. You adjust your behavior to protect that approval. You ignore red flags to keep receiving crumbs. Your value drops internally before it drops externally. You start questioning your worth without anyone saying a single harsh word. You begin believing that being tolerated is the same as being respected. Then something even more dangerous happens. You begin to perform your personality instead of living it. You become careful, controlled, and overly aware of how you appear. This psychological performance drains you. You lose authenticity, because authenticity feels risky in a place that never wanted you. You hide your needs, because needs feel like a burden in a space that did not ask for you. You try to match their energy, but matching their energy means lowering your own. Their indifference becomes your mirror. Their distance becomes your emotional template. Over time, you lose access to your natural confidence. Your self-respect starts depending on their occasional attention. You forget that your value existed long before they dismissed it. This is the hidden damage that uninvited presence creates. It is not just external rejection, it is internal reshaping. Your mind bends itself around their behavior, shrinking in the process. The psychological paradox is brutal. The more you try to earn your place, the more they believe you never had one. The more you chase acceptance, the more they assume you deserve less. People do not respect what chases them. People do not value what is always available. People do not appreciate what enters without permission. Your mistake was not wanting connection. Your mistake was placing your value in a space that measured you by presence instead of worth. A space that judged you for entering instead of appreciating that you came. Now the question becomes unavoidable and uncomfortable. If you finally stopped appearing in every place that leaves you emotionally starving, would the silence expose their absence? Or would it finally reveal that the only voice missing from your life was your own? You think walking away will make you forgotten, but it makes you unforgettable in the minds that still carry respect. You think leaving unwanted spaces means losing connection, but the real loss happened the moment you stayed. If you want to reclaim your value, you must understand what silence, distance, and self-protection truly do to the psychological equation. The human mind is wired to respond to contrast. When you remove yourself from spaces where you once appeared without invitation, the contrast becomes loud. Your absence creates the noise that your presence never could. This shift forces their internal scanner to recalculate you. They no longer see you as guaranteed, they see you as withdrawn. Withdrawal carries power because it shows you finally understand your worth. Dark psychology calls this value restoration through distance. It is the process where your absence raises the respect that your presence could not. When you stop offering yourself freely, people must decide if they ever valued you at all. Machiavelli once suggested that distance protects power more than closeness ever does. When you step back, you reclaim the authority you surrendered. You remind others that you were never meant to be background noise. The mind that once ignored you now faces a new question. Were you truly worthless, or did they simply misread you because you were too present? This uncertainty unsettles them, because humans fear losing what they assumed they owned. Their behavior begins to expose their real intentions. If they valued you, they notice the silence. If they respected you, they reach out. If they relied on your availability, they panic quietly. This reaction is the mirror of truth. Not the way they treated you when you were always there, but the way they behave now that you are gone. Absence unmasks people without forcing them. And something else happens inside you. Your mind begins to repair itself once distance enters. Your confidence returns because the environment no longer drains you. Your standards rise because the pressure to perform disappears. Bandura explained that behavior changes when consequences change. When you stop giving uninvited presence, the consequence for them is emotional distance. The consequence for you is regained self-respect. Your identity begins to rebuild from the inside. You start expecting respect again. You start recognizing coldness as a red flag, not a challenge. You start matching environments to your worth, instead of shrinking your worth to match environments. And then the psychological truth becomes clear. You never lacked value, you lacked boundaries around your value. You never lacked importance, you lacked environments that recognized it. Uninvited presence was not the cause of your suffering, It was the symptom of something deeper. You wanted acceptance so strongly that you ignored the places that made you disappear. You placed your identity in spaces that never had space for you. When you leave those spaces, you reclaim the parts of yourself you forgot. Your voice becomes louder inside your mind. Your needs become valid instead of negotiable. Your standards become firm instead of flexible. And as your value rises internally, the world responds externally. You stop chasing acceptance. You stop forcing entry. You stop making yourself available where you are not wanted. The shift becomes irreversible. You no longer fear absence because absence protects you. You no longer fear distance because distance reveals truth. You no longer fear rejection because rejection was only a sign to walk away sooner. The real psychological victory is simple. You finally understand that your worth is not proven by where you enter, but by where you refuse to stay. Your value does not rise when people choose you. Your value rises when you choose yourself first. So now the final twist lands with quiet force. If you stopped entering every place that never invited you, how many doors would finally open because they see your worth? And how many doors would you close forever because you finally learned the one secret nobody taught you? Not every space deserves you.